Welcome to your adventures in dreamland. Soft, surreal, and slightly cheeky sleep stories with awe and wonder. I'm Serene, your guide tonight. You may have noticed my stories are very different, yet kind of the same. That's because I write in many styles. Dreamscapes are surreal journeys where strange and beautiful things happen. Dream Grounds is cozy nostalgia that honors the unsung magic of real life. Dream Wonders explores incredible science, nature, and history. Dream Studies dives deeper into academia like physics and philosophy. Dream Priming is like an affirmation and a fun story. And Dream Spoofs takes a funny look at life's insanities. They all blend, but each has a home. Look in the playlist to find one that fits your night. They're all pretty yummy. If this speaks to you, tell the algorithm. A like or a share goes farther than you can think. It helps me keep the night lights on. And do tell in the comments what stories you love, or whatever you'd like for me to dream up next. Now, we return to what we are. Moments before sleep are sacred and potent, a time when your subconscious is most open. Over 90% of how we feel and act is shaped here. So these stories aren't just for sleep. They're immersive adventures carefully curated to expand your inner world and spark real change in your outer one. It's like planting a seed in fertile soil. Let it take root, because in sleep, you unknowingly return to your purest state. Bliss, awareness, freedom. Your story begins. Modern Piracy in The Counter Game is episode 57 and part 4 of 4 in our Real Life Pirates mini-series, located inside our Dream Wonders playlist, where we marvel at life's fascinating facts. From the shadows, the familiar voice cuts in, warm, amused. Captain Marlowe, at your service again. Only this time, dreamer, we're not sailing with Blackbeard or Bonnie. Tonight, we slip into the present day, across the moonlit shipping lanes where pirates haven't vanished. They've just traded cutlasses for Kalashnikovs. Okay, either I'm staring at the glow of my phone at 3 a.m. again, or I've just woken up on the deck of a cargo ship big enough to carry 10 Costcos stacked on top of each other. And trust me, there's no free samples out here. The ocean hasn't changed. It still rolls black and silver under the moon, endless and restless. But look closer. You're not aboard a creaking wooden sloop. Tonight, you stand on the steel deck of a container ship, stacked high with metal boxes painted in every color. They gleam like Lego bricks in the starlight, each one filled with goods bound for every corner of the globe. Around you, the ship hums with diesel engines. Radar dishes sweep the horizon. Crewmen in hard hats walk the deck with flashlights, their eyes scanning the vast dark. For all its modern strength, there's unease in the air, because out here, from the Gulf of Aden to the waters off Nigeria, pirates still prowl. It feels dreamlike, doesn't it? The same sea that carried galleons and sloops now carries tankers the size of floating cities. Yet the threat remains, creeping across centuries like a shadow stitched to the waves. 2. Why does piracy persist today, and how is it fought? So why, in an age of satellites and warships, does piracy still survive? Shouldn't it have gone extinct with the wooden mast? The truth is tangled, dreamer. Piracy persists because the forces that birthed it never left. Poverty, war, desperate coastlines, and oceans too vast for any navy to fully police. Wherever trade is rich and shores are poor, someone will take the risk. But it's not one-sided. Just as pirates evolved, so did those who fight them. Shipping companies hire guards armed with rifles. Naval coalitions patrol with helicopters and drones. Engineers lay ships with barbed wire and water cannons, building floating fortresses against the threat. And yet, the question hums, can piracy ever be truly defeated? Or is it stitched into the fabric of human desperation and the endless call of the sea? 3. Somali coast origins, collapse of government, foreign fishing fleets, and desperation. The modern story of piracy begins along the ragged shores of Somalia. In the 1990s, the government collapsed, leaving no navy, no coast guard, no real authority at all. The waters turned lawless overnight, and into that vacuum came foreign fishing fleets, massive trawlers from Europe and Asia, dragging nets across Somali waters, scooping up fish by the ton. For local fishermen, the sea had always been their lifeline. Suddenly, it was stripped bare. What many don't realize, dreamer, is that Somalia's coast was once among the richest fishing grounds in the world. Tuna, lobster, shark, a banquet that supported families for generations. But when the government collapsed in the 1990s, foreign trawlers swept in like vultures, dragging nets that stripped the sea bare. Some even dumped toxic waste in Somali waters, poisoning both fish and people. Fishermen who once hauled in pride now hauled in empty nets. With their livelihood stolen, some picked up rifles instead of nets, skiffs instead of fishing boats. At first, they called themselves coast guards, demanding payments from foreign vessels they accused of stealing. But soon, those fees became ransoms, and the Coast Guard blurred into pirate. It's a bitter irony. Piracy here was not born from greed alone, but from survival, from a sea that betrayed the very people who had relied on it for centuries. Then came something darker still. Foreign ships dumping toxic waste into the unguarded waters. Cancers, strange sicknesses. poisoned beaches. With no state to defend them, Somali communities were left to fend for themselves. So men who once fished for tuna turned to defending their coastlines. At first, they claimed to be vigilantes, chasing intruders away, but desperation mixed with opportunity, and soon those same fishermen realized that hijacking foreign ships was far more profitable than casting nets. What began as survival twisted into a new economy. Piracy. Dreamer, picture a sunburned fisherman standing on shore, his nets empty, watching trawlers swarm the horizon. Then picture that same man, months later, climbing into a skiff with an AK-47, the sea that once betrayed him, now offering revenge. 4. Tactics of Somali pirates, speedboats, motherships, AK-47s, and boarding at night. Unlike the sloops and galleons of old, Somali pirates use speed. Small fiberglass skiffs skimmed across the waves, engines roaring, carrying men with automatic rifles and rocket-propelled grenades. They launched from mother ships, captured fishing vessels or dhows that served as floating bases, hiding the skiffs until the moment of attack. Out at sea, a lumbering tanker could barely turn, let alone outrun boats moving like bullets. One of the strangest sights of the Somali pirate era was the use of motherships. These weren't just fishing boats. Sometimes they were full-sized hijacked vessels, repurposed into floating pirate bases. From their decks, smaller skiffs could launch hundreds of miles offshore, extending pirate reach deep into the Indian Ocean. Imagine a cargo ship carrying both captives and captors, turned into a staging ground for new attacks. The pirate's weapon of choice was the AK-47, rugged and cheap, often paired with rocket-propelled grenades to terrify crews into surrendering. Boarding wasn't about long battles. It was about shock. A few bursts of gunfire into the air, a rocket launcher waved at the bridge, and most captains stopped engines rather than risk lives. And when night fell, raids became even more surreal. Pirates often attacked under moonlight, knowing crews would be drowsy, their eyes straining against the dark. To be on watch then, dreamer, was to feel hunted by ghosts on the water. Boardings often came at night. Imagine it, a vast container ship, lights dim, crew anxious, when suddenly dark shapes race from the horizon. Grappling hooks, ladders, sometimes even long poles with spikes. Men clambering up steel hulls under moonlight, rifles slung across their backs. Once aboard, the tactic wasn't slaughter, it was control. Crews were captured, ships steered toward hidden coves along the Somali coast. From there, the long game began. Ransom. Millions of dollars paid, not for gold doubloons, but for safe return of ships and men. Close your eyes, dreamer. Hear the thrum of an engine at midnight, the slap of waves, the bark of orders in a language you don't know. Modern piracy didn't look like treasure maps and parrots. It looked like speedboats, AK-47s, and steel giants held hostage in the dark. 5. Case snapshots, famous hijackings, ransom negotiations, and pirate towns. If you think pirate raids belong only in dusty books, dreamer, let me wake you gently. Some of the most famous hijackings happened in the last 20 years. Take the Maersk, Alabama, in 2009. A U.S. cargo ship hijacked by Somali pirates in the Indian Ocean. The crew fought back, barricading themselves in the engine room. Captain Richard Phillips was taken hostage, sparking a standoff that ended with U.S. Navy SEAL snipers firing 3 perfect shots across a rolling sea. It was so cinematic, Hollywood barely needed to change a thing. Then there were the pirate towns that grew along the Somali coast. Aile, Hobyo, quiet fishing villages turned into hubs where hijacked ships anchored for months. Imagine tankers looming just offshore, their crews kept hostage in makeshift camps, while ransom negotiations dragged on. Millions of dollars passed hands, bundles of cash sometimes parachuted from planes. Another haunting case, the Sirius Star, a Saudi oil tanker hijacked in 2008. The pirates anchored it off the Somali coast, demanding $25 million. The ship was so massive, carrying 2 million barrels of crude, that it seemed absurd. A handful of men holding the world's energy hostage. And yet, they did. These events weren't just crimes. They were theater on the high seas. Moments that showed how fragile the global system could be in the hands of a few desperate men with skiffs and rifles. And those negotiations, they could take weeks, even months. A strange blend of business and menace. One minute, calm voices haggled over the phone. The next, threats cut through the static. It was piracy as commerce, ruthless, patient, global. So yes, dreamer, it wasn't parrots and eye patches. It was satellite phones, wire transfers, and skiffs bobbing in the shadow of skyscraper-sized tankers. And still, somewhere in that grit, the world couldn't help but feel a flicker of the old myth, a small band defying empires on the sea. 6. Gulf of Guinea. Kidnappings for ransom, oil theft, and West African hotspots. Now we steer west to the Gulf of Guinea, off Africa's Atlantic coast, where piracy wears a different mask. Here, the target isn't container ships full of toys and electronics, but oil. Tankers heavy with crude became floating jackpots. Pirates stormed them not just to hijack, but to siphon off barrels by the thousands, selling stolen oil on the black market. And if not oil, then people. Kidnappings for ransom became the signature of West African piracy. Crews snatched from decks, dragged ashore, held in jungle camps until companies paid for their release. Terrifying, brutal, profitable. Unlike Somalia's wide, lawless waters, the Gulf of Guinea often saw raids right at anchor. Ships waiting outside ports in Nigeria or Benin were boarded in the dead of night, crews snatched before they even set sail. Kidnapping became the business model. Quick strikes, hostages whisked into the creeks, then ransom calls made to shipping companies. Oil theft added another twist. Pirates tapped pipelines and hijacked tankers, siphoning crude into hidden barges. The stolen oil then flowed into black markets across West Africa, feeding local economies while starving national ones. For sailors, the danger was constant. Unlike Somalia, where hijackings led to long hostage standoffs, here the violence was often immediate. Guns barked, and men disappeared into the mangroves, leaving ships abandoned and crews traumatized. Dreamer, picture it, a vast tanker glowing under African starlight, then shadows rising from the water, swift, ruthless, gone before the world even knew. Hot spots flared off Nigeria, Benin, and Togo. Governments struggled. Navies stretched thin. Ships that once worried only about storms now bristled with barbed wire. Guards pacing with rifles, eyes glued to radar screens. And yet, the rhythm of trade pressed on. Oil had to flow, goods had to move. The Gulf became a chessboard of risk, pirates always looking for the next vulnerable piece. For you, dreamer, imagine standing on deck at midnight, the air thick and hot, knowing danger doesn't come with a black flag anymore. It comes silent, fast, and with motives that have nothing to do with buried treasure and everything to do with survival and profit. 7. Strait of Malacca, busiest global shipping lane, stealth raids, and small boat attacks. Now, tilt your gaze east, dreamer, to the Strait of Malacca. It's one of the busiest shipping lanes on Earth, a narrow, winding passage between Malaysia and Indonesia, funneling a quarter of the world's trade. Oil, electronics, food, everything from sneakers to smartphones squeezes through here. And where there's traffic, there's opportunity. Pirates here don't always storm ships with rifles blazing. Sometimes they slip in quietly. Small boats approach in the dark, hooks scrape against hulls, and barefoot men climb aboard like shadows. By morning, cargo is gone, or the crew is tied up and robbed. Some attacks barely make headlines. A raid that lasts only minutes A few crates stolen before the pirates vanish into mangroves. Others are bolder, whole tankers diverted to secret anchorages, crews held until ransom is paid. The Strait of Malacca is only about 1.7 miles wide at its narrowest point, yet it carries nearly a quarter of the world's traded goods. Oil tankers, container ships, fishing boats, ferries, all funnel through like beads on a string. That congestion makes stealth attacks frighteningly easy. Pirates can blend into the constant traffic, looking like any other fisherman until the last second. Some raids are almost invisible. A handful of men slip aboard under a cover of night, knives drawn instead of rifles, robbing the crew quietly and vanishing before dawn. These hit-and-run jobs rarely make global headlines, but strike fear into local seafarers who know pirates might be only a wave away. At times, syndicates turn piracy here into a professional operation. Entire ships stolen, repainted, and renamed within days. Their cargo offloaded into hidden warehouses. Imagine losing not just crates, but an entire vessel swallowed whole by the shadows. What makes it eerie is the geography. The strait is so narrow, you can see lights twinkling on both shores. Imagine being a sailor there, land close enough to touch, yet danger just as near, hiding in the night. So close your eyes and picture it, dreamer. A floating city of steel sliding through a narrow throat of sea, the hum of engines loud, while somewhere in the dark a skiff drifts, waiting, watching. 8. Life of a modern seafarer. Long nights, fear of radar blips, and watch rotations. And what's it like to live in this world? Ask any modern seafarer, and you'll hear the same thing. Exhaustion laced with vigilance. Ships run on rotations. Crews taking turns in the bridge, staring at radar screens, scanning for strange blips that might mean company. Every unidentified boat on the horizon pricks nerves. Is it a fisherman or something more? Life at sea for modern sailors often feels like living in a perpetual half-sleep. Even when off watch, crew members rest with one ear open, attuned to any sudden clatter on deck. Some describe dreams that blur with duty, hearing phantom footsteps, waking in a sweat, convinced someone has boarded. To cope, sailors invent small rituals, brewing tea at odd hours, humming familiar songs during lonely night shifts, or carving tiny marks into bulkheads like talismans against bad luck. Tattoos, once the mark of Golden Age sailors, still persist. Anchors, stars, or the coordinates of home etched into skin, reminders of safety far away. And when danger passes, there are long stretches of aching monotony, hours watching empty horizons, days with only the thrum of engines. Pirates haunt the imagination, but so does boredom. For many, that endless waiting, punctuated by jolts of fear, is the true test of endurance. Nights stretch long, the ship hums, the sea sighs, but sleep comes in fragments, always ready to be broken by alarms. Some sailors string barbed wire along the rails. Others rig hoses as makeshift cannons, anything to feel less exposed. And beneath it all lies the quiet fear. What if it's us? What if tonight the skiffs come for our ship? Dreamer, imagine yourself at the bridge window at 3 a.m., sipping bitter coffee, eyes blurry, watching a faint dot on the radar drift closer. Your heart taps faster. Somewhere out there, unseen, is a boat. And in that moment, the centuries collapse. Feel the same dread as sailors did under the skull and crossbones. It's the same sea. The tools change. The fear doesn't. 9. Private security, armed guards, barbed wire, water cannons, and evasive maneuvers. In the Golden Age, a pirate ship might have carried 30 cannons and prayed they fired straight. Today, merchant ships often rely on something far less romantic, but just as effective: private security. Many vessels crossing high-risk zones hire armed guards. They carry rifles, night vision gear, sometimes even heavy machine guns. A few men, standing watch on deck, can be enough to make pirates think twice. Some ships began to look more like floating fortresses than cargo carriers. Concertina wire coiled along railings like steel vines. Fire hoses left running, so decks stayed slick and treacherous. Even mannequins dressed as guards to fool pirate scouts watching through binoculars. And then there were the citadels, fortified panic rooms hidden within the ship. If pirates boarded, crews would lock themselves inside these steel compartments, stocked with food, water, and satellite phones. From there, they could wait for rescue while keeping control of the vessel's engines, leaving the attackers stranded on a powerless ship. The presence of armed guards was perhaps the biggest deterrent of all. Not a single ship with private security has ever been successfully hijacked in Somali waters. The sight of rifles glinting on deck turned many pirates back before they even fired a shot. But guns aren't the only tools. Ships wrap themselves in barbed wire, strung like cruel garlands along the railings. High-pressure water cannons are rigged to blast attackers back into the sea. Some ships paint zigzag patterns or travel at awkward angles to make boarding harder. A clumsy dance, but sometimes it works. And then there's the citadel, a reinforced room deep in the ship, where crews can lock themselves, if boarded, safe until help arrives. Imagine huddling inside, the sound of boots echoing above, knowing your best weapon is steel doors and a phone call for rescue. Dreamer, picture it, not cutlasses and muskets, but barbed wire, floodlights, and security contractors sipping instant coffee while scanning the horizon. The tech has changed, but the stakes are the same. Keep the ship free or lose it all. 10. Naval patrols, international coalitions, convoys, and aerial surveillance. Beyond private guards, the world's navies have stepped in. Off Somalia, coalitions formed. NATO, the European Union, the United States, China, even rival nations working side by side. Warships patrolled shipping lanes. Helicopters circled overhead. Drones scanned the waves. Convoys became common again. Clusters of merchant ships escorted by destroyers, just as in wartime. The seas turned into cat-and-mouse games. Pirates darting out, navies chasing, sometimes capturing, sometimes sinking. At the height of Somali piracy, nearly 30 nations contributed warships to patrol the waters. NATO, the EU, China, India, Russia, unlikely allies suddenly sharing the same sea lanes. It was one of the rare moments where geopolitical rivals found common cause, keeping the arteries of global trade open. Helicopters swept low over waves, their searchlights piercing the dark. Long-range patrol planes scanned hundreds of miles, while warships escorted convoys of merchant vessels through the most dangerous stretches. For pirates, the ocean began to feel smaller. Mother ships were intercepted, skiffs destroyed before they could launch. Some pirates surrendered at the first sight of a destroyer looming on the horizon. Yet patrols could never cover every corner. The Indian Ocean is vast, and for every warship, there were 100 places for pirates to hide. One surreal image lingers. A ragged skiff, powered by a sputtering outboard motor, facing down a $1 billion destroyer bristling with missiles. David and Goliath, replayed on the waves, though this time Goliath usually won. But even so, pirates persisted. The ocean is vast, and even the strongest navy cannot be everywhere at once. For every skiff stopped, another slipped through the cracks. Dreamer, lean over the rail in your mind's eye. Watch the horizon shimmer. Somewhere out there, a frigate prowls, engines thrumming like a heartbeat. Somewhere else, a skiff waits, quiet, watching. The sea is big enough to hold them both. 11. Technology and tracking, AIS signals, satellite monitoring, and drones. In the old days, a lookout climbed the crow's nest and squinted at the horizon. Today, ships rely on blinking screens and invisible signals. Every vessel broadcasts an AIS signal, automatic identification system, a digital "I'm here" beacon picked up by satellites and coast stations. It's meant to keep ships safe, but it also means pirates can sometimes track targets as easily as opening an app. To fight back, navies and companies lean on technology. Satellites sweep the oceans, mapping routes and flagging strange movements. Drones buzz overhead, their cameras watching skiffs that might otherwise vanish into waves. Even algorithms now comb data, predicting where pirates are most likely to strike, like weather forecasts for crime. Some ships even switch off their AIS transponders when entering high-risk waters, vanishing from public maps so pirates can't track them. Others use silent distress systems, hidden buttons that ping nearby navies the moment an attack begins. A secret alarm bell in the middle of the sea. And yet, dreamer, technology cuts both ways. Switch off the AIS and a ship can hide, but so can its enemies. At sea, invisibility is as dangerous as it is protective. The ocean, once read by stars and sextants, is now navigated by glowing screens. Still, the suspense feels the same. Who is watching whom, and who will strike first? 12. Economics of piracy, local poverty versus global trillion-dollar trade. At the heart of modern piracy lies a cruel imbalance. Local poverty versus global wealth. On one side, villages where families scrape by, fishing grounds stripped, jobs scarce, and young men face hunger or hopelessness. On the other, shipping lanes carrying trillions in goods, oil, electronics, grain, containers stacked like castles. To a pirate, the temptation is obvious. One successful hijacking can bring in more money than a fisherman might earn in a lifetime. Ransom payments often reached into the millions. In places where opportunity is scarce, piracy became not just a crime, but an industry, a lifeline, a gamble worth taking. Meanwhile, the global economy absorbs the shock. Shipping companies pay higher insurance. Goods inch up in price. Trade continues because it must. For every pirate skiff launched, 1,000 ships still steam ahead, too valuable to stop. At its peak, between 2005 and 2012, Somali piracy alone extracted hundreds of millions of dollars in ransom payments. That flood of money reshaped coastal economies, new houses, cars, even schools built on ransom cash. But the cost didn't stop there. Shipping companies paid billions more in insurance premiums and rerouting fees as vessels detoured around Africa to avoid the danger zones. Dreamer, imagine the contrast. A barefoot man with an old rifle, climbing onto a tanker carrying billions in crude oil. A speck of desperation against a mountain of wealth. That imbalance is the engine of piracy. Then, now, and perhaps forever. 13. The human side. Villagers, families, and the cycle of risk, reward. Behind every headline of a hijacked tanker lies something quieter, the human cost. In Somali villages, piracy money once poured in like a tide. Young men who had nothing suddenly came home with cars, satellite dishes, new houses. Shops popped up, taverns buzzed, children went to school on ransom payments. For a brief moment, piracy looked like a golden ticket, but it came with shadows. Families lived with fear. Husbands left and never returned, killed in raids, or drowned when skiffs capsized. Some who survived found themselves hunted, imprisoned, or cast out once the money dried up. Mothers and fathers watched sons leave for the sea, knowing the gamble could bring fortune or death. For the sailors held captive, the scars often lingered long after rescue. Months or even years locked in sweltering holds left many with PTSD, nightmares, and depression. Some could never return to the sea again, their confidence in the horizon shattered. Families rejoiced at reunions, but beneath the smiles lay the quiet weight of trauma carried home from the waves. The same was true in West Africa. In small towns near the Gulf of Guinea, piracy pulled in men with no other prospects. Oil theft funded gangs, but it also funded families, villages, until the cycle spun again with violence. Dreamer, it's easy to imagine pirates as faceless villains, but look closer and you see people trapped in the same storm. Poverty, hope, desperation. The sea became both savior and executioner, and that is the cruel truth. Piracy may glitter, but it always extracts its price. 14. Legacy reflection. Despite centuries of change, and piracy still captures imagination. And still, despite all the blood, the fear, the broken lives, piracy refuses to vanish from our imagination. Why? Because pirates represent something larger than crime. They embody defiance, a refusal to bow to kings, navies, corporations. Whether under a tattered black flag or a fiberglass skiff, they stand as reminders that there will always be those who choose rebellion over order. Of course, the reality is harsh. Most pirates end in poverty, prison, or the grave. But myths are not built from endings. They are built from symbols. The small boat defying the vast tanker, the outlaw daring to challenge the world's might. Modern media has kept that myth alive, from films like Captain Phillips to countless documentaries and news cycles that turned real hijackings into global drama, each retelling, whether in Hollywood or headlines, stitches another layer onto the legend, blurring fact and fiction just as it did in the Golden Age. Dreamer, as you lie here, listening, you may feel it too, that tug of the forbidden, the thrill of imagining yourself outside the lines. That's why pirates live on, not just in seas, but in stories, songs, and symbols that outlast their time. They are shadows stitched to the ocean and to us. 15. Then verses now. Compare Golden Age to today. Different tools, same desperation. Lay the two ages side by side, dreamer, and the echoes ring clear. In the Golden Age, pirates roam the Caribbean and the Atlantic, slipping through trade routes fat with sugar, rum, and gold. Today, their descendants hunt across the Gulf of Aden, the Gulf of Guinea, and the Strait of Malacca, chasing oil, electronics, and ransom. The goods have changed. The greed has not. Back then, cutlasses and cannons ruled the fight. Now, it's AK-47s and satellite phones. Yet the imbalance remains. Small, desperate crews against hulking vessels carrying the wealth of the world. The odds look impossible, and still, some men climb aboard. The causes haven't shifted either. Poverty, collapsed states, corrupt officials, and oceans too wide to patrol. Where governments fail and opportunity glimmers, piracy blooms like a weed through cracked stone. Dreamer, it's almost surreal. Centuries apart, different ships, different weapons, yet the same raw hunger in men's eyes. Pirates of old left their mark on parchment maps. Pirates of today leave it in digital ransom logs, and both leave the same reminder: the sea will always breed rebels when desperation and opportunity collide. 16. Closing reflection. And so, dreamer, our voyage through the pirate world draws to a close. From hammocks on wooden decks to radar screens glowing in the dark, you've walked the line between myth and truth, past and present. Piracy has always been two things at once, a brutal reality for those who lived it, and a myth that stirs the imagination of everyone else. Perhaps that's why it endures. Now, as the ship fades, I guide you gently back to your own bed. The hum of engines becomes the rhythm of your breath. The crash of waves turns to quiet in your room. You are safe, far from the sea. But should you dream of black flags, moonlit raids, or the thrill of rebellion, know you carry with you the echo of every sailor who ever stared into the dark horizon and wondered what waited there. Sleep well, dreamer, for though the pirates have gone, the sea still whispers their names.